Hello guys, welcome to my channel. So if you use Vagrant and VirtualBox to spin virtual machines on your computer, you would notice that each time you log in or you SSH into your virtual machine, you are greeted with this default prompt, which is quite tricky to change, and many people might want to change it, but you don't know how, because if you look on this other side, I have been able to achieve that with Lucas showing here and Luca VB. And even if I should log out and SSH into this machine, you will see that yes, it goes to the default, which is it logs straight into this user information or into this custom prompt and not the default. So if you want to change the default prompt settings of a Vagrant machine which you have spun up and don't know how to, then this video is just what you need. And so without further ado, let's dive straight in. So if you go into the directory where you initialize or you run your Vagrant init, you'd find this Vagrant file, and this is the file where all the configuration settings for your virtual machine are seated, and this is where you're going to edit all of it. So first things first, use any editor of your choice. You can use Vim, Emacs, VS Code, anyone at all that is convenient for you. So you open up that Vagrantfile, and if you do that, you're going to be greeted with this thing. So this is where all your configurations are hosted, but what we're concerned with is beginning at line number 15. If we come here, this is the section where we are going to be editing, just here, nothing else. Every other thing outside of here is not within the scope of what we're doing now. So in this location is where we're going to be entering the settings that we want. So the first thing we want to do is to have the config vm.hostname. We can set the host name to anything we want. Let me call it Bravo VB, or let me just call it Bravo, right? So the host name is this thing here after the @ symbol. So this is what the host name is. So when whatever name you want to appear after, just before your prompt or after this @ symbol is, or whatever you want your host name, your shell host name to be, is what you're going to write here. The next thing you want to do is to set your the name of your machine itself. So if I come here and I try to log out of this machine, and I SSH again, you are going to, oh sorry, no, I log out and I do the Vagrant halt. The Vagrant halt is to shut down the machine. So you see that it prompts me, it gives me this prompt, Luca attempting graceful shutdown of virtual machine. And if I should want to if I run Vagrant up again, you will see that it says bringing machine Luca up with VirtualBox provider. So, and you see here it's prompting, is saying Luca blah blah. So if you're using the default setting, what you have here is default and not Luca. So because I've renamed it, that I have Luca showing up here, and whatever name you want to give to your machine is what you're going to put here. So let's say I call it Bravo B. Now that's the name of that is the name I want to define. I want to give this virtual machine. Now every time you change the name of a virtual machine, anytime you define a new virtual machine, you is like creating a new changing. If you're providing a new name for a virtual machine, it's like creating a new machine altogether. So it will take you as much time as it took you to when you ran the first Vagrant up. The same time it took you to run that Vagrant up is the same time it's going to take to run, or approximately the same time it's going to take to run this Vagrant to spin up this new machine each time you change the name. So you be careful. If you are in a haste, you don't want to be changing the name frequently, so choose a name that you're convenient with and wouldn't want to be changing very often. So, but granted, if each time you can always switch between multiple machines, it's just to come here, change the name, and then replace the Vagrant file with the file for that particular machine, and you can SSH and do whatever you want to do. So after that, the next thing you want to change is your the username. You see, this is the username. The looker we have here is the username. So on every prompt you have the username at hostname. That is the default setting. So whatever you want to appear on the left hand side of this @ sign is what you provide as your username. So let's say I want to give it the name Bravo. Now the thing is, currently, because this user does not exist, we cannot use Bravo now, because if we try to, it's going to be looking for what does not exist on the virtual machine. So we would first of all leave this thing as the default, which is Vagrant. If you remember, when we have the default, when we log in default, we see Vagrant at something. So we are going to have, let's leave it as Vagrant so that we can log in, because this machine has a default user called Vagrant. So when we log in with Vagrant, we can now create a user and change other things that will allow us to log in as the new person. Then we can now come here and change the username to the new user that we have created, or any other user I want to set as the default whenever we run Vagrant SSH. So for now, let's leave this as Vagrant. Then the last thing we want to do is to set the provider. The provider I'm using is VirtualBox. You'd want to, whenever you're typing this out, you'd want to make sure it's all in small caps, small letters or alphabets. And then we're going to give it any name you want. I'll use box. Then we set box.name to be Bravo, and then we end. So this name Bravo is what is, if you go to VirtualBox, you see that currently what we have, two VirtualBoxes running, this one which is called Luca and this one. So back in the manager, you see that Luca has a name of itself, and the default one has another name, Elena, and the name default, and then random numbers, which you may not want always. So if you want to change this name here automatically without having to do it in the UI, you can define it here. So I like doing it here at once, so I don't have to come here and be changing settings and then turning off my machine and trying to change this here. So I can always use I can always do that in the Vagrant file. So you set it here and then it's done. So after doing all of that, you can now save the file, and if all things working well, we can now say Vagrant SSH this time around. And if we do the Vagrant SSH, I want you to be looking at this side of things in the Vagrant VirtualBox manager, and you'll see how things are changing in this UI. So we'll run Vagrant SSH and we hope all things are going to work. Oh, sorry, Vagrant up first. Okay, so we see that they said is prompting us out, is bringing machine Bravo B up with VirtualBox provider, and things are already beginning to change in the VirtualBox manager. So hopefully everything is going to run smoothly, and if there's no error, Very good. So we can see now here that we have the name that we provided, BRAVVO, Bravo, has now been updated in the VirtualBox manager, and the rest is going to continue, is creating an SSH private key. And so basically our settings are correct, there's no error, and so Vagrant is proceeding to spin up this machine, and when it is done, it will now allow us to SSH into that machine and see it will allow us to log in with our Vagrant SSH to that machine now, which we have named it as Bravo B. So you can see here that the name is working. We have Bravo B, Bravo B, Bravo B. By default, what you'll be seeing here is default. So while let's wait for the machine to do what it's doing, and when it is done, I'll return and we'll continue from there. Okay, so Vagrant has spun up our virtual machine. So now if we go and run Vagrant SSH, it should take us straight into the machine, and voila, here we are. We can see that right away the settings that we chose have taken effect already. And so we'll move on to the next step, which is trying to change this default user from Vagrant to something else. So if we ls the etc/home directory, you'd if is the home directory, if we ls this home directory, we'll see that we have Ubuntu and we have Vagrant users. So the way we are going to do this is we would first of all create a new user, and after creating a new user, then we will now set a password for the user that he can use to log in. So the first thing is we are going to sudo add user, and let's call the name of that user Bravo. So if we do that, we are going to be prompted with a password, required to enter a password, and once that's done, we can see his name is Bravo D, and every other thing would accept. So if we open this this folder, we'll see that we have a new user Bravo. So next thing is to give Bravo sudo privileges. So if we say we switch user to Bravo and say I want to sudo switch user back to Vagrant, for instance, and I do that, I'll be greeted with this message that Bravo is not in the Sudoers file. Now there might be limitations when you need to have sudo permission, so let us allow Bravo have sudo permission. And so with that, we are going to open the vi sc/sudoers file. Oh sorry, we need to switch back to Vagrant. Sudo vi sudoers. So if we enter this file, we can come right down to this location, this position, and beneath this person we are going to add let's add a user Bravo all. Now it's just for the purpose of this video that I am giving all of these permissions, else you would want to give just this particular permissions that you need. So but for this video I'll just demonstrate that this is possible, but then you wouldn't want to do this on a production server. So with that being done, I can now save I can save, and if I go to I switch to Bravo, I can now switch back to Vagrant from Bravo after providing the password without any issues. And so with that, the next thing we have to do is that we are going to create a password for Vagrant. Now if I open this, if I switch back to Vagrant, you're going to see that there's a file, a directory here called .ssh. Now this is where all SSH configurations of passwords are stored for, to allow when you type the Vagrant SSH, this is where there's a check happening in this directory that allows the login to happen. If we go to if we switch over to Bravo and we open the directory, we see that there's no SSH here. So what we have to do is that we are going to create an SSH directory here for Bravo and do the configurations. Now there are two ways to doing this. The first way is that the first method is to copy out the public key of this Vagrant user. We are going to copy out this is SSH key and give it to Bravo, so both of them have the same key, so we do not have to go and create a new private and public key pair. That is not secure, but then it's possible, so we can do it. Then after we have done that, we will now do the second approach, which is to create a new public and private key pair and use it on this account. So straight up to the first approach is switching to what I want to do is to switch to Vagrant, cut the SSH file or directory, and in that directory there's a file called authorized keys, right? So I'm going to open up that file and I can see this key. What I'm going to do is to copy out this key, and then if I switch back to Bravo, I can now make the directory .ssh and then touch this file. I can touch this file and then I'll have to copy this again. Then I can now use vi authorized keys. I can paste this here and change this to Bravo because I'm using Bravo. Then I would exit, and so if I open this folder now, I can see the authorized keys, and if I cut that file, I can see that I have what I pasted in there. So now I have granted Bravo, I have created SSH authorization for Bravo. So now I just need to log out and then go back to my Vagrantfile, and I can now switch the user from Vagrant to the new user I just created, which is Bravo. And if I save and I do Vagrant SSH, all things should work. Did I make a mistake? Let me, okay, let's go back, switch this to, so sometimes you might notice that there might be an error in what you have done, so you just have to go back, change this to Vagrant, then log in as the default user, then try to figure out what the problem is, right? So I'm going to okay, I'm going to remove these authorized keys. Okay, let me see. Oh my, I had already removed it, so let me see. I don't have the author. I put it in the wrong folder initially, and I think I deleted it without checking first, so I would have to repeat that process again. So I just need to cut SSH authorized keys, then I can switch back to my user. Then I would cd into .ssh and touch authorized keys again, and then I can now vi into, okay, I'll first of all copy out this, then vi into authorized keys, enter insert mode, paste this, change it to Bravo. It really doesn't matter because the key itself stops here and doesn't extend to here, but just for identification. So oh sorry, and so if we cut authorized keys, we see that we have what we want, so we can now log out and log out of the virtual machine itself. Then we open our Vagrantfile and we go down to line number 18 and switch the user from this to Bravo. So this time around, if we run SSH, we hope we did not make any mistake again. And yeah, we did not. So we are now logged in as Bravo, and our host name is also Bravo. So this is how you can achieve this using that first method. Now the second method, which is to create a public and private key pair, is more secure because you wouldn't want to have two users to have the same public key. But this was just demonstration that okay, this is possible. But then if you want to do this on a real project, you would want to first of all create the public and private key pair, and then use the one you created for this user, and not to have two users sharing the same public key or same key pair. So what you're going to do is to log out, and if you first thing is to create in, I prefer creating it in the directory where the virtual machine is initiated, but anywhere that is convenient for you, you can do it. So you run the command SSH keygen b96, and if you run this, it's going to be generating a new RSA key pair, and then it's prompting you to choose a location where you want to save it. So I'm going to choose this location, and I'm going to name the file where I want it to be saved as Bravo1. So if I want a passphrase, I can choose, but I don't, so I'm going to hit enter and continue to. And so if I open this file, I can now see that I have the Bravo1 and Bravo1.pub. This is Bravo1 is the private key, while Bravo1.pub is the public key, and I am concerned about this private key, both of them actually. So how do we go about the next step? The next thing we want to do is that before I show you the next step, I want to demonstrate something. If I should run the Vagrant SSH in debug mode, through the login process, one of the last steps, you'd see this info SSH where we have invoking SSH blah blah blah, and it's saying there's a path to where there's a private key that it is looking at. Vagrant is looking at this file, private key in this location, to check for the authenticate this user if he's an authorized user of this user on this account or on this virtual machine. So what we are going to do is that we are going to copy our private key and replace it, put it at this location, so that Vagrant is able to look at it as the private key to check for this user, and then use that to validate the login attempt. So first thing we're going to do is would log. Now this is on our local machine, so we're going to log out. So if we log out, I'm going to cd into this location first of all, and if I do that, look, here is the file private key. Now this private key is particular to this to the default user or the Vagrant user. If this private key is lost, it means that that user, the default user, can no longer have access to this machine. And because Bravo is also sharing the same public key that is associated with this private key, Bravo would also not be able to log in, and that means all users are logged out. It means that nobody can access that system again or that server. So before you make, you have to be very careful about this file so it doesn't get damaged or it doesn't get lost, because if it does, then you're lost, like you're screwed up. So the first thing you do is that you would move. I like to rename the folder or rename the file. Move private key to PV. So I'm going to call it default.private key. So I call it default.pv. So now so I'm sure that anytime I need to use this key, I need to log in as default, I can just switch this to the private key, and I'll still be able to log in as default if I want to set that as my default login detail. So I can, so that being done, I can go back to this location, and then I'm going to copy this file into this location, into this location, and then give it the name private key. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy. I would like to copy it so that I can have a backup somewhere. So I'm going to have Bravo1, and I'm copying it to this location slash. Sometimes I like copying this so I don't have to, I don't risk making a mistake. So this is pasted. So if I should go back in here, I can see that I have the private key and I also have the default private key. So now that I have given the private key to I have set the private key to this person, in as much as I have done that, I would still need to copy this public key and replace it on the server, so that when login is made or login attempt is made, authentication can be done properly. So right now, because it's pointing, the private key is looking at a different file, I will not be able to log in. So what I have to do is that I'm going to cut out the content of bravo1.pub. I'm going to copy out the content of this and paste it somewhere, so where I would be able to I'll be able to easily see it. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go back to that directory, and I would, for now, temporarily, I would rename this private key to so this is the bravo.pv. so I know that this is Bravo's account private key. Then I can now change move default to private key, and if I do that and I switch back here, I can now say I can SSH back using the default settings that are already there. Then I would go into this SSH folder and change the public key from that to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to vi open up.ssh.authorized keys. Now all I need to do is to come here and copy out I may choose to, okay, so since I'm in insert mode, okay, so I can come here and paste this and give it the name Bravo1, because I know that that is the name just for identification. And so I can save the file, and now I can log out and switch back into this location, and then move the private key. I can move the private key to be .pv, and then I can now move bravo.pv to private key. So if I switch back to this and I run SSH this time around, I should still have a successful login. Yep. And so now I logged in successfully, and if I should go into SSH and I cut the authorized keys, you see that I have both Bravo 1 and the former one. So anytime you want, if you want to log in as the default user, or that is as Vagrant, you just need to go switch over and you'll be able to switch the name of the file, and you'll be able to log back in as your Vagrant and all of that. So I hope this you found this useful, and basically you can always do that. You can always switch back, change the username in the Vagrant file configuration file, and always change your the keys and all of those things. So I hope you found this video useful. If you did, let me know in the comment section below. Share, subscribe, and until I see you again in the next video, goodbye.